to our first live session of the COVID Global Hackathon event. I'm Sam Lessin. I'm one of the organizers. I'm very, very excited to be here with Cori and Raylene from the U.S. Digital Response Team. Thank you guys for joining this morning. I'll start out by just having you guys, if you don't mind, introduce yourselves to everyone who's kind of tuning in, and then we'll go from there. Cori, do you want to start? Kind of talk a little bit about your background and what you're working on right now.
Sure. Hi, everyone. We are delighted to join you today and really excited to learn more about what you're up to and follow along. So I'm Cori Zarek, and I am, along with Raylene and a couple of other co-founder of U.S. Digital Response. We are a group of volunteers who came together shortly after all of this COVID news hit to think about how we could use our data and tech skills to be useful, if we can, like many of you. And in my day job, I'm at Georgetown University, where I teach about data and tech things and work for the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation, a center on campus that brings in practitioners to do great work on data and digital service efforts in the public interest. Before that, I was, among other things, Deputy U.S. Chief Technology Officer, and I did some work with Mozilla and Code for America, and am a big believer in all things open. So excited that I'm sure many of your projects are relying on open source code and looking forward to seeing them put back out in the world.
Awesome. And Raylene, it's great to see you. I miss you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about tell us a little about your background and kind of what you're working on right now and how you fit into the equation.
Great. Hi, everyone. I think Cori gave a great introduction of the USDR effort, which we're excited to tell you more about. My background's pretty different. It's more like Sam's. I spent the last 10 years, more or less, working primarily at two big, fast growth tech companies. Started at Facebook and then spent the following 4 years at Stripe. Most recently, though, just in the beginning of this year, I finished a fellowship with the Aspen Institute, their new tech policy hub, where I kind of really got integrated into learning about government and how I think technology can play a huge part in doing more good for people all over the country, but really internationally. So that's what I've done. And as Sam mentioned, we used to work together very closely. So also happy to be reunited and really happy to be seeing so many people kind of hacking and putting their efforts towards trying to help with this crisis. Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny you say that. Every day feels like a year right now. We actually started this, I think it's 2 weeks now, Cori. So yeah,
If that.
But it's been incredible to see what the response that we've had. So basically what we're doing, as Cori mentioned, we're trying to help governments respond more effectively to the crisis. And what we've done is we've created a platform that matches volunteer and kind of volunteered help with government groups across the U.S. to help them respond to mostly acute needs to the COVID-19 crisis. But I think as the weeks pass, there's also a big focus on recovery and just how do we help all these government groups like kind of respond to the needs of their constituents and residents. So at this point, we grew from a Google form that was sent out to like a few email lists, let's say 2 weeks ago, to now we have over 2,000 volunteers signing up to help, which is incredible. And we're in touch pretty much every day or every week with dozens of state and local government teams. I'm really proud of the progress the team has made in the sense of just going from Google Forms to now we have like a triage process and we use all these tools. And we're at the point where we can, if a government group writes in, we can most likely get back to them within a day or so, or maybe two. And we place volunteers essentially as soon as we figure out what they need. So if we were like, this is a real example. Like the state of New Jersey they're working on some amazing tools actually to help people understand the crisis, connect local residents with scientists who can ask questions. And we've put engineers on that team to work with the state of New Jersey to actually like build open source tools that then any state or any city can really adapt for their own use.
Got it. Makes sense. And I guess, like, what are the biggest challenges? Cori, do you have a view on that, or really either of you guys?
Oh, sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
The sound seems to be going in and out, Sam. I'm not sure if we're all good.
Let's figure this out. All right. People in the comments, can you all hear us? Sorry, we're gonna crowdsource this since we're doing this live. I can hear you guys, and it sounds good to me. But someone give me a read. I'm not seeing any negative responses. Cori, can you hear me,
Sam,
or am I dead for you?
I'm hearing you, but it's pretty garbled, and it sounds like the audio might be going in and out based on what I'm seeing. Do you have headphones, maybe?
Yeah, let me put on
that might
headphones
help us.
while we're at it. Hold on one second, guys.
Let us tech troubleshoot this in real time, Sam.
In real time.
Listen, it's a hackathon. It is what it is. We're doing it live.
Oh, here we go.
Hold on. We'll throw on the headphones. All right. Let's just go this. All right. I now have my headphones on. Is that better or not better? Can you guys hear me? Is that better? Oh man, we were so close. Sorry, give me 1 second. Am I totally dead to you guys? You can't hear me at all?
It sounds like we're back, Sam.
Okay,
if
we're
you can.
back. Yes? But Cori's not responding to me, which makes me
We're not hearing you, but
yeah.
seeing a positive gesture, which is great. Raylene, maybe we should, just to catch ourselves up since we just paused, would you mind repeating some of what you were just saying about some of our efforts? That might just help us get back on track.
Great,
while Sam gets situated.
Sounds good. Okay, so sorry if you heard this or I couldn't tell but made it through, but I'll just say it again. So as Sam mentioned, this effort's super new, about 2 weeks ago. And basically what the U.S. Digital Response is trying to do is we're trying to help government groups across the U.S. respond more effectively to the COVID-19 crisis. We're doing this by creating essentially what looks like a platform that takes volunteers on one side and helps match them with government groups across the U.S. It's a little more than that, in that it might not just be people, it could also be advice, technical advice, or data advice, or all kinds. And it might also be routing government groups to tools that already exist. So it's been pretty exciting. We started with a Google form with a couple dozen people who signed up, and now we have a database of 2,000 volunteers and growing every day that we can use to quickly kind of identify good people. We interview them, and then we match them with projects in need. The other exciting part is we've managed to get the word out. So we're in touch with dozens of state and local and city groups across the country who are sending us things that they need help with.
So can you guys talk about a few of the specifics? Like, what are some of the projects, like, I don't know, specific projects that you're seeing the most traction and impact?
Sam, we don't have sound on you. I'm not sure if you can hear us.
I can hear you. This is so annoying. I think people can hear me.
There we go.
Are we back now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I don't know what that was. Anyway,
great.
I was saying that's awesome, and I was wondering what are some examples of some of the places, like, could you talk about specific projects, like one or two that you guys I think are going super well, or where there's like a ton of impact happening?
Totally. I'll talk about Ask a Scientist. I don't know if you want to share about COVID Act now, Cori. So I'll start with this one I mentioned just earlier with the state of New Jersey. So there's an amazing team, kind of an innovation team in New Jersey, and they're just building awesome tools to help residents really understand what's going on. So one tool is called Ask a Scientist. It's a collaboration they did with the Federation of American Scientists, where people can publicly ask questions about COVID-19, and then scientists will answer them in a really, I think it's great. It creates a kind of trusted hub for information. But the best part is the code is totally open source. And the idea is that any city or state can actually look at that tool and adapt it for their own use and potentially like put it up for their local needs and customize it for what they need. So that's just one kind of early and smaller example that we've worked on.
Got it. And Cori,
sure, I'll add. another thing we have been doing is working with some states at the moment, New Jersey and California among them, to consider how to scale small business loan applications. Given the stimulus bill that was just passed, this we know is going to be very top of mind for state and also local governments to consider how to pass that support along to their small businesses and their residents and others who will need it. And so we're working quickly with partners in various states and locales to consider how we can support that rapidly.
Got it. Makes sense. And Raylene, I wanted to ask you, one thing you and I talked about a few days ago was this idea that like you guys are getting inundated with both volunteers and with projects, right? And that you can only do so many, and so there's a bunch of projects that you think are super cool and like you'd love to see people working on, but like you guys just like can't take on right now. Could you talk about, I think a few of those that you'd be most excited to see come out of something like the hackathon we're doing, or from other groups in the coming days?
Yeah, it's so funny because things change so quickly. So I think the great news is we've actually been able to really ramp up our ability to respond to projects. So when it comes from a state and local group, we're really trying to dig in and see what we can do. But what I would say to answer your question about like what more can we be doing? I think the areas that we're not looking at as much are in some ways like proactively seeing if like let's say you live in a city. And I think a lot of us don't really think to go check out what are the benefits that our city is offering, especially to maybe underserved populations, like people experiencing homelessness, senior citizens, people who maybe aren't living and breathing in technology the way we are. And I think there's a lot more that cities are trying to help them. And there's a lot more that technologists or people who don't actually use those benefits could be doing to help cities deliver them to more people. So like one thing I want to do, and I've been doing as part of this project, is just kind of proactively looking and seeing what is my city or my state or my county actually doing, like going through the forms online, like seeing what are the benefits. And I think there are ways that I think a lot of people can proactively find ways to help. So yeah, that's one idea. I don't know if Cori, you have other thoughts.
Yeah, so one of the projects my team in my day job at Georgetown, not my side hustle with this, but one of the projects we have going on is some research around what tech-enabled tools exist to help Americans sign up for social safety net benefits. And there are a lot of incredible tools out there, including products from great nonprofits like Sevilla or MRelief or One Degree, and they're getting started and getting traction in areas around the country. And we're recognizing now with just the likely path ahead, more and more people are going to need that type of support and are going to need assistance from some of these public benefits programs that exist. And if your county or your administrator is still using paper forms and requiring you to physically come to an office to sign up, like that's not going to work. And so putting our energy around some of these proven tools that exist and thinking about how we can support those efforts and replicate them or scale them in more places is, really something I think we can all learn from. I think, technologists we are drawn to problem solving and running at the hardest problems. And I think one of the things we might need to remind ourselves to stop and take a step back with, especially in a time of crisis like this, is that any problem we're looking to solve, someone out there has probably solved it or is already working on it. And it is so important for us to remember that and to go and find those people and partner with them, support them, work together, collaborate, because we are all stronger and better and faster and more effective when we work together. And we are going to need all of our colleagues working together to get us through this and to really leverage solutions that we come up with to be the most effective and applicable everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think is kind of fascinating, right? And like, it's such an interesting problem we face. Is on one hand, this for instance, this hackathon we started in the startup community that's now gone to, I think it's at 12,000 people and growing fast, and people are really persuaded. There's so much. Everyone wants to help. Everyone, there's the obvious ways that doctors help and that people in the community can help, and then you have this massive people, and it's like we want to do stuff, and like the question is what to do, right? And I'm a big believer that things like hackathons are super important, both for engaging people, right, for getting people thinking about ideas that wouldn't have come up in other forms. But then to your point, there's just like a bunch of obvious stuff, and there's no question you're seeing like 100 projects that are all trying to do the same thing. In a normal cadence startup ecosystem, you'd see those projects kind of glom together, right? You'd see people kind of rally around a few projects, but in the, oh my God, there's no index exactly of what to do yet, although there are some. You guys have worked on one, and there are others there. The forcing function of how we get people onto the right sized teams to have the right sized impact, I think is, I don't know, as I've been watching this hackathon and seeing all the energy and great ideas and things like that evolve, that seems like, I think the key problem I'm coming to is like there's so much demand to help and there's so many problems, but the matching is super difficult, and making sure that, people are kind of working on the highest impact stuff. It's a new type of problem. I don't know. I'm kind of curious. I mean, Raylene, you've been, you both have seen a lot, but I mean, especially Raylene, you've done hackathons and been involved in so many different, large high growth companies. Like, have you seen problems like this before? And like, what are some solutions or paths forward do you think are like kind of the best answers?
Yeah, I think this is like unprecedented, right? I feel like what we're seeing is just incredible. But I guess I will say there's a few things we've applied on our team and even as you were talking, I'm just thinking out loud that I think we could do more of. I mean, Cori alluded to this. I think often the first step is just seeing, like really taking a deep look at what's out there. I think we're in a world right now where I was just commenting in another call yesterday that like when you Google like any set of keywords, like you're like COVID assessment tool, testing site, whatever, you're just getting inundated with like hundreds of results that become really, really hard to sort through. And so I think there is something around how do we start to like really look at what's out there and like try to figure out how to amplify it. So I think that's one. That's something we're doing within the team is like we really review everything and are trying to actually consolidate a lot of needs. The other one that for the hackers out there, I think putting my Stripe and Facebook hat on is I think APIs are incredibly powerful. Like it is much easier to look at a product that's out there and maybe you can build something on an API that is useful and then actually has a lot of the benefits of almost like creating an ecosystem of like COVID, plugins or add-ons to things. I'll give you one fun example that I thought we were working on. I was like, wow, this is great. So someone wrote in from a city who was like, hey, one of the issues we're having is, restaurants have very different hours these days because we don't know if they're serving takeout, and if they're doing takeout, like what's changed? Everything we have is kind of like the normal hours, right? So then we realized that the best solution actually here is to have Yelp and Google like update their source, somehow they add some interface that highlights what the modified hours are. But that's an example where I think in a hackathon, you could quickly build something on top of the Yelp API or the Google APIs and basically build a like COVID view of restaurant availability, right? So I think that's something, I think starting from scratch for every problem, I think right now is like, it's really tough. And I've also seen the other case where people have built amazing tools from scratch, but then they get overwhelmed with a lot of like attention, and then they're trying to maintain this tool furiously. So I guess I would just say, like, I think let's all think about how do we kind of put the most fire behind the most important things. It's like fewer, arrows, or what is that? More wood and fewer arrows. That saying, and I think that's top of mind. I think the other one is product management, which Sam, you're a pro in, but it's like that's the thing I feel like I totally understand why everyone's just trying to run so fast. But what I'm seeing is when we stop to take a bit of a pause and really think of it like a product problem. So we say, who are the users? What are the needs? What's the most highest impact need? And what's the shortest like path to meeting that need? I just feel like it's like discipline in product management has also really helped people kind of concentrate their efforts towards what matters the most.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's interesting. My hope is that with this hackathon that we're running, that we'll get to a place where, obviously you have a lot of people expressing interest in building products in different spaces, and that we'll actually be able to, toward the end of that, as people are delivering and like kind of showing off what they're doing, like funnel them right in a little bit more in the right direction. Right direction is the wrong phrasing. In like ways they can work and magnify their impact, I would say, right, in terms of what's going on. But it's interesting because I think there's two challenges you're trying to solve at the same time. One is great organizations like yours and a few others will have like a top-down view of what should be built. There's then like the bottoms-up view, right, which is like you don't know everything and like you can't be possibly focused on everything. And so like I think one of the beauties of getting a bunch of smart people together is like letting those ideas flower for a while, right, and germinate. But then the kind of pipeline between how do you connect those ideas that are bubbling up, right, into the right pockets and like to give them the right support, whether that's scaling support because they're the right products but they don't have the reach, whether that's like product support because it's like an interesting piece but needs more germination. Like I don't know, it's interesting because we're very excited to be doing this. I'm super thrilled about the response and the engagement. But I think this is in some ways going to be like a unique challenge of this hackathon and this period and this crisis, right? Is that our normal filtering mechanisms, whether it's capitalism or whether it's, engagement, like they just don't work. It feels like responding to this type of a situation and crisis. I don't know, Cori. I'm kind of curious, like from your perspective. And again, you obviously worked at a pretty big scale, like from the government's perspective, right? Very top down. Like at least, tell me if I'm wrong about that, but like in my head, it seems that way. Like what? Do you have any advice for about how we should think about this, like matching and how to bring people together around the right projects?
Yeah, so I'm glad you raised that. So government can often be top down, and a policy making time it often is. But I think what a lot of us over the past 10 years, folks who came into government, what we've really tried to do is sort of realign that balance so that it is, in fact, the users, whoever they may be in a given situation, driving the conversation about what government should prioritize and focus on and either buy or build. And so the work we were doing in some of the government transformation efforts at the federal level through efforts like the U.S. Digital Service and 18F and Presidential Innovation Fellows and the various tech teams all throughout the 100 departments and agencies in our federal government was really trying to think differently and not about mandating IT from the top, but instead providing services to the people who most need it. And I think that will forever be a bit of a tension, but we've made a lot of inroads, and I think we're pushing in that direction. So one thing I'd offer to the many volunteers who are scrubbing in on projects right now is in this moment, much of what you're working on, much of what we're doing, and certainly what we're focused on at U.S. Digital Response has a government tie-in. We're going to need the government to work with us to relay information or to provide data that it has or to collaborate in some way or another. And so a few pieces of learning that I would share, just given that time having been in there. One, make it easy on them. These government colleagues are facing a crisis that is unprecedented, as are we all. And they are learning how to respond in real time to the urgent needs and demands to deliver their mission critical services in the worst of circumstances. So if we're producing something that we want to collaborate with them on, make it easy on them. Two, consider your graduation strategy, such as it is, on any projects you're working on from the start. And so if that does involve moving it to work with a government team, figure out how to get in touch with them and consider those inroads. Whatever that longevity is of the product or the tool or the service that you're creating, think about that graduation strategy from the start, because I think one of the things that would be really unfortunate is if so many of us all around the country and the world are working on problem solving and they just kind of go off to die. Some of them inevitably will, it happens. But it's really important, I think, in this moment to be thinking about where we take our work and how we can support that. With U.S. Digital Response, as you've heard, we're focused primarily on supporting state and local governments. Many of us came from roles in the past where we've worked at all levels of government, but we are currently constituted of folks who are all volunteers who are currently outside of government. So we are in regular touch with leadership at all levels of government, from the federal, state, local, but we are at the moment made up of non-governmental volunteers. Our project partners are many governments, as you've also heard, but just I'm trying to keep one eye on questions that are coming in and try and respond to some of those as we go. But for all of us who are pitching in as volunteers, most of us have day jobs. As I mentioned, I'm on the faculty at Georgetown University. We're in a moment where we're attempting to move our efforts online. And that is, universities are not traditionally bastions for online and sort of rapid response, nimble, agile learning. We do a lot of our work in person and we have a lot of collaboration opportunities on a campus. And so, we're moving all of that in a different direction. Many of our colleagues pitching in on U.S. digital response also have day jobs or other gigs and are doing this as a bit of a project on the side. And so if you're interested in plugging in with us, that's wonderful. And we understand that many of you do have other efforts that you're working on.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing, and again, this is all evolving in real time. We're all figuring this out together in different ways. I think there's one other approach I would mention to this, like how do you have impact or deal with this kind of the graduation strategy, so to speak, is like you might not need one or have one. So let me just be clear about what I mean by that. So like there are two projects I like that are in my community that came from my friends, right? That are like pretty small ultimately. One is this site called SaveOurFaves.org, right, which was made by Mike Krieger, who's the founding CTO of Instagram, and like. I think when you look at what that is, it's like, yes, you could imagine how it could get bigger, but really it's just immediately having impact and getting money to restaurants that he cared about, right? And like in a very local community in San Francisco. Amazingly, my good friend and work partner, Andrew Cortina, who is the founder of Venmo, created something that was related but different called bailout.nyc, right? Which was also about kind of getting, money and resources through Venmo and PayPal and things like that to restaurants. And he, to your point about reusability, made it super modular, so it'd be super easy for anyone to boot for their local city, right? But it is interesting because I think there's this big problem about how do you graduate, how do you have government interaction, like how do you make something really big? But I think the reality is in this moment of crisis and engagement, I also think the other answer might be like, think about building software and tools that really are just for your local community, right? And they really are, they in theory could go really big and do all this stuff, but like part of the beauty of hacking and part of the beauty of having these types of projects is taking space and just like doing stuff in your own backyard that you can distribute yourself and literally can have an impact right now, tomorrow, and like not being so concerned about making sure that it's your thing or like the thing you're working on, which like changes the entire world, right? I think that like we're used to software being global and we're used to the idea of global platforms, and so like our mentality is always like, well, I build here and then I want it to go everywhere. But software is also cheap to build and easy to reuse, and so the reality is like I wouldn't forget about those properties too. And like in some ways, the most impactful stuff might be the quick hits, right?
Yeah, Sam, I love this, and I think we're both nodding like a lot. And I think I totally agree. And one thing I just wanted to say from the very front is like, thank you to everyone watching this. Like, I think if you are taking any time out of your life to spend your time towards trying to help people with this, I just like thank you so much. I feel incredibly grateful for the team that we have and all the volunteers that signed up. And I also agree, like that's kind of what I was kind of saying about like look at your local websites, like your government or whatever is in your community. I think community impact can be small. It can also be walking door to door and like building an easy way for people in your neighborhood to talk to each other, right? But I was going to say, and so I love that, Sam. I thought of a few things. I do think one is, do think about the harm. So I'll just kind of give an example. Like I think matching local restaurants, I'm familiar with both of those projects. They're awesome. They give gift cards to local restaurants down the street. I feel like that's just kind of positive, really. I think there are some cases where you could accidentally do something that you might not, one example is like matching medical equipment. I think that's kind of hard to do sometimes informally if you're like not sure where the sources are. And like, I think just kind of have to think through the complications there. But the other area that I think I love to see the creativity just get unleashed is things that I think especially technologists are especially good at, which is I think sometimes thinking very creatively about data. I think everyone would be surprised out there. Like when an interesting way to look at the data and make sense of it appears, and it just feels like it's good and it's well thought out, those tools become really valuable and like they kind of go viral around the circles. And I think if people haven't seen it, covidactnow.org was an example of this, where people proactively were like, we need better data. And they have now built this kind of amazing tool that's in the hands of government officials like all over the country. And again, it doesn't have to scale like that. It could actually be useful for your neighborhood or your city. But I actually think data and tools are like particularly interesting for tech people to help build.
Totally. And I guess just to build one thing on that, I just think it's really hard to be sitting at home and know that there are these like huge things and feel like you have skills and want to engage, right? And like, no, in the end of the day, it's like, if you're a doctor, what you do is obvious, right? Like, and it is the most important thing. Like if you're a logistics specialist, do your thing. But like, then for everyone else, it's like, I'm a great software engineer, I'm a product designer, I'm a whatever. It's just like, it's funny because I think that on one hand, the story is how do you have global impact? what is people missing? What's the aha thing that saves the world, right? And that's cool. Like, people should experiment with those. But then there's also just like, do stuff in your backyard. To your point, like, look at those. Look at what software really gets you, which is like new ways to look at data, impacting your local community. Like, it's not, it's doing like those types of projects that are well suited for quick software projects, not like organizing the supply chain logistics from China for blank in one project, which is just like, it's just not a hackathon project. Right? It's like what I would kind of think about. Even though it's tough, because in some ways you want to be drawn to those types of things. That is, if you said like you can only do one thing, that might be the thing you want to do as a society. Anyway, we're a little bit over time, and everyone's really busy and doing really important work, so I don't want to take more of your guys' time. Thank you. Do you have any parting words you want to share with the people who are watching this now or will watch it later?
Just thank you. And don't forget to share your stories. We're, all running so fast and doing so much. And I think we want to be sure that we are tracking what's working, what's going well, what are we learning from each other in this time.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one offer too. If you've suddenly found yourself in a spot where you have something that a lot of people are using and are getting impact from, and you're like, how do I scale this thing? Feel free to send it in to us too. And we can help take a look at it and see if we can help you scale it or support you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time today. Again, we're doing it live, as you guys know, so we're gonna keep kind of putting some great people together in little panels and hopefully create some artifacts that'll be helpful for people hacking right now, as well as in the coming days, as people figure out how to sort their way through this, how to have an impact, and how to be part of the solution. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Go team, go.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.